Now, you know that I am so excited about today's episode. I actually just got a bit out of breath because I was jumping up and down with excitement already for today's episode. We're going to dive straight in. Three of my favorite humans here. First time we've ever had four people on the podcast together. And a huge welcome to you, Steph and Jess. And I would love to kick off really by asking and leaning into this space of optimal energy. So Ness and I talk a lot about optimal energy, how important it is to look after ourselves as a human being, you know, the foundational elements, sleep, water, movement, the classics, if you will. And I feel like this is a really cool place to start exploring this conversation because the two of you have an incredible business, as our listeners now know. And I would love to get your insights into what's one of the most important considerations when it comes to movement in terms of reaching that place of optimal energy. Because a lot of people feel like, and myself included, feel like we're falling short of that, you know, in a lot of instances. How do we get there? What do we need to consider? Steph, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I think. First off, thanks so much for inviting us on and having us here. We're so excited to be a part of this with you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think if you're a person who, like ourselves, you know, you're running a business, life's hectic. Maybe Jess and I are both mums as well, and it's finding that time to have exercise for yourself as well. Like, we're lucky because exercise is part of our jobs, but if taking that out, if I worked in a full-time job, sometimes I think, how would I fit exercise in? And something that I find has worked really well, that we tell our clients as well, is to book it in like a meeting. Like, you can't miss this. This is important. And also staying consistent, because then your body gets used to that output of energy and then it craves it. Like, you know yourself, if you have a week off from something that you're used to doing. I just had 2 weeks off, and by the end I actually have a video of me dancing on the beach with my son because I was ready to, like, let's go again. You know, I couldn't sit still. But yeah, and looking at it as a whole, I think, yeah, staying consistent with your movement, and when you go, blocking them in like meetings. And it's also so important for your mental health too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Jess, what would you add?
Yeah, I think adding to that is, I think we can often be so guilty of heaping these huge expectations on ourselves. And I think being gentle with those expectations, that, you know, we are busy and we have lots of things going on. And so when we can't make that class, or when we're feeling a bit low and we make it and we don't put in what we wanted to, or we don't get out of it what we wanted to have a little bit of grace for ourselves, that, you know, that's the ebb and flow of life. And if we change our mindset, and this is something that I always come back to and harp back to, is how should I talk to myself as if I was one of my friends saying something to me? Like, what would Steph say to me, you know, if I've had a hard time, or you know, things have really shifted, or I found things difficult, I haven't been able to be in class. What would her voice say to me about that? Because my own voice sometimes will be, oh my gosh, I didn't make it, and that was so frustrating, and I didn't get to my regular classes, or I didn't feel so good. But Steph would say, you know, be gentle, you know, have that time to rest, because it could be an indication you can't actually pour out from an empty cup. If you're in a place of feeling low or empty or deprived, trying to then go and do more often can't come from emptiness.
So much in that. Oh, sorry, go.
No, I was just going to reiterate what Jess just said. And I just read something recently, because I'm always trying to keep my education up to date, blah, blah. And it said, if you have to prioritize either sleep or exercise, that you should always choose sleep. So a lot of people think, and whilst yes, you always just hear, oh, come in, you'll always feel better, like blah, blah, blah. But if you're at that point where I'm so tired, always prioritize sleep, because overall, that's what's going to make your body feel better and your mind feel better, rather than pushing through. And so it is okay. And I think that's what Jess is saying, like allowing yourself to have that rest.
Absolutely. And I'm a huge fan of sleep. It's sort of like something that I got into as an adult. It sounds a bit weird, isn't it? only discovered sleep the last couple of years, but it's that whole thing. Like, I love going to bed. I love my bed. I love sleeping, and it's a big priority in my world. I wanted to come back though to what you were just saying in relation to the way we speak to ourselves, and I resonate with that, not just in this regard in relation to if you don't end up going to your dance class or the gym or whatever it is that you choose to do, but it flows across so many different other areas in life around how we talk to ourselves and how we are sometimes our own worst enemy, because a lot of the shoulding, I should be going to the gym 3 times a week, and I should be doing this, and blah, 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 blah. That's what really gets us unstuck in the first place, because that spiral kind of starts to flow, doesn't it? It's so you never get up really quickly from one of those horrible conversations with yourself. So I love the pointer around, how would my friend talk to me? How would I talk to my children in relation to that? And this can flow across all aspects of life. So when we look at it through that lens and we're deciding on a way to provide us with optimal energy, I think it was really important that you talked about sleep, because some of the patterns I've seen in myself in the past were what you said: push through, get up, go to that thing. Like, I'm tired. No, that's just an excuse you're making up in your head. Just push through. So where's that line? It's a fine line, but where is that line? And when do you think you're in a position to know the difference between my body needs rest and I'm making up excuses so I can get out of going to the gym or going to whatever exercise I want to do that will make me feel better?
I think it comes back to finding something that when you are in your optimal space, it's something that you magnetize to. And we love what we do. Dancing and our movement and our fitness is based around dancing, having a great time, being around community, being around other women in that space. And so when we are in our optimal energy, we are naturally magnetized and drawn to doing that. And for me, it's an alarm if I'm in a place where, when I'm in my best place, that's what I want. But if I'm not in my best place and I am, putting it at an arm's length, or I'm feeling reluctant to go, or it feels heavy to go, something in that flow is misfiring or not working. So what do I have to do to get back to that point? Thinking back when I first was instructing, I found it really difficult to get up for the early mornings, really, really difficult. And I thought that it was the difficulty in waking up early in the morning, but it actually was a struggle with anxiety. And I would, the night before having to do an early class, be like, if I don't get to bed like before 8:30, I know that I'm not going to be able to sleep. And then I do that thing where I would clock watch. If I fall asleep now, I'll get 5 hours. If I fall asleep now, I'll get 4.5 hours. But I realized through that period and through that process and through counseling and chatting with people that the problem there was not the waking up early. The problem was actually I was really anxious. And what I did really want was to be in those classes and to be moving and to be exercising and to be connecting with community. But something else was going on that meant that I felt a heaviness going to a space that I normally loved. And so it took a little bit of working out, trying to figure out what was going wrong there, which ultimately I think comes back to, having good people in your world who know you and recognize that something's a bit off in whatever's going on.
Such a good answer.
Yeah, what I really, really love about that is this, it's almost like I feel like the natural state is actually to want to move. The natural state, this is what's coming up for me. There's so much in terms of how we've been told we should exercise, which is a bit of a soapbox that I get on frequently. And as you ladies know, and if you've listened to the previous podcast that I talked about dance and finding Dance Fiit Studio, which has just changed my world, I felt like I had to fit into a mold of how I should exercise. And I've never been a person who loves exercise or sport or this or that. But then when I found dance, I was like, actually, I love the feeling of this. I love the movement. It brings me joy on so many levels. And is that not a natural state? So it really is peeling off the layers of how we should be moving our body, because the natural state, and I'm curious to get your thoughts if you agree with this, is actually that movement feels good and we would want to do it. And then to your point, Jess, if that's not the go-to, then there's something else that's going on. Because when we're in our most optimal state of energy and joy, and sometimes it's the dance classes are hard, don't get me wrong, I'm so puffed, and they're like, these guys really work me, but the actual, there's this element of moving towards wanting to move, not staying stuck. And if we're not feeling that, then like you say, something else is going on. It could be the anxiety that's holding us back. It could be expectations. It could be the wrong way of moving. It could be anything, a burnout, it could be stretching too much, that we need sleep, so many factors, but we don't take the time to look at what's under the hood, peek behind the curtain at what's driving that behavior. The behavior we display is not the reason we're feeling that way. There's always something underneath. So would you agree with that when we're in a natural state, actually our body probably wants to move? Is that a fair assumption?
I think that's a fair assumption, because it releases the happy hormones, so it becomes completely addictive, like yourself, like you get, and I think from that, if you're someone that just you're not training for a bodybuilding contest, or you're not an athlete or something, and you just want general fitness, you need to find something that is fun and that you enjoy. What is the point and I feel like 100% of our members would reiterate this, that they just don't want to go to a gym. Or a regular exercise class, because what we do is fun, and that's what keeps them coming back, So, and that's the connection I think that you need to make, is finding something that like lights your fire, and you're like, oh, this gets me moving and I love it.
Yes. And that's why I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because that's what I love about your business, is that whilst there's been businesses like yours around for a while, but it does break that cycle of traditional, this is the only way to move your body. And there's lots of different avenues and things out there as well now around that. But I think that's a really important message. If you're not feeling like you want to move, why? Explore, go deeper. Ness, you haven't come to a dance class yet.
Not yet, but I bet you the next time I'm up in Brisbane, you'll be going back in your workout gear. I'm very uncoordinated, so
you're
I'm just
welcome
going to throw that out there. Yes, but I'd love to give it a go, because for me, movement is important. That's something that I got my dog. She's 5 years old this year, and part of the choice to get a dog this time around instead of a cat was I want to walk every day. I want to have the purpose of getting up, and I love walking with her because it gets me outside. I listen to podcasts, and I feel I can connect in some way to something that makes her feel really happy, and it's just a beautiful start to the day. So my only rule is I don't walk in the rain. So that kind of means if it's bad weather, after a few days, it's like, oh, I really miss my walking. It's that routine that helps me start the day. And on the odd occasions where I can't do it because we've got work commitments, it's like I'm always thinking in the back of my head, well, could I walk this afternoon? Could I do something? Because it's just become something that is a ritual or a routine or a habit. And I know that it helps me. And I think that is the key. And that's where Nicky and I are so different, because I know for her, when she talks about it, like she literally lights up when she talks about dance, and she comes in with them, don't book a client meeting until like an hour afterwards. Bright red.
Turn to normal color.
This is what I actually look like normally.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
But for me, I think because there is that lack of coordination in the past when I've done Zumba or anything like that. I get frustrated, and that negative voice starts. So it's about finding the thing that's right for you, knowing that movement is a way of gaining energy as opposed to depleting energy. So is there anything that you want to add to that conversation? Because that was something I had to get my head around a bit when I started sort of really seeking out sport or movement going. But if I'm tired, why would I move? Why shouldn't I just go and lie down?
I think it comes back to this point of expectations and looking at the context of what's going on around outside of that. The biggest example for me at the moment is I'm, pregnant with my second child at the moment, and I started to get really sick with morning sickness at about week 7, week 8, and it completely sidelined me for the last 3-4 months, which has been a huge shift in my mindset and expectations, because I couldn't do what came naturally, which was to dance and exercise and be a part of this community and, fill my cup that way. And so feeling nauseated and unwell and tired, I could be hard on myself and go, well, I should just get up and go and do this or that, because I'm going to find that it's going to feel good in one way, but in another way, I actually had to just stop and think about the context and go, this is not going to be like this forever. I need to zoom out a little bit and go, while I can't do what would give me optimal energy or make me feel the best that I could, the context of what's going on in my life in a bigger picture has shifted, and I need to give myself space for that, because it's not always going to be like this. And I say it to Steph all the time, it's so hard being sidelined, but I know that I'm going to get back out there. Like, get me off the bench, put me back on the field, coach, please. But I'm not going to be benched forever. And that's exciting, is being able to remind myself that I just have to have patience for this season. I know that I'm going to get back, because that is what I'm magnetized to. That's what I'm drawn to.
I love that term, magnetized to. And I think it's such an important point around the seasons or being sidelined. And a lot of the conversations we also have is around burnout and avoiding burnout. And I know personally, one of the things about having gone through burnout is that there's this constant, at times it's a constant almost fear, underlying fear of not wanting to push myself, because when I pushed myself in all avenues, that's where I feel like I broke myself. And so even though there's so much contextually, environmentally that is different now to back then, there's still that underlying fear. So it's a very valid, I think, thought to have around that awareness of when we push. And I think what's so important about this conversation is that it is not about always pushing. It is about pulling back. It is about nurturing. I'm totally going to take that. What am I magnetized to? And the other thing is that it's not all black and white. So yes, Jess, you have to be benched and sidelined right now, but there could be some times where I know I had a shin injury, that sounds very sporty. And I remember having a chat with Steph, and I'm like, I really want to dance, but I can't do all the jumping, because there's a lot of jumping, So we'll just come along and do what you can, which is so hard in the moment, because, metaphorically, but also literally, the music's really loud, everybody's pumped. I'm like, I just want to jump, but don't do it, Nikki. But that's a building of a muscle in itself, knowing our middle ground, knowing what is our middle ground, when can we push, which is the theme of really what we're talking about. When do we need to nurture and pull back? But it doesn't have to be all or nothing. There is healing in movement. It could even be going along and just, whatever I know we're talking a lot about dance, but I remember working with a PT years ago, and he said, just show up and you can do some yoga stretches for the 40 minutes. It's that time of the month and you're feeling like you really need to nurture healing in movement in healing.
We had a team meeting yesterday, and we kind of touched a little bit on this, because we were talking about, so I know we're still talking about dance. We were talking about,
right. I mean, I'm cool with that.
How can we change our wording to make people feel okay if they need to take the lower option? And Lauren said a really good thing, where she's like, if you're 100% today, do this option. But if maybe you're not 100% today, try this option. And it's that thing. It's like, you're still allowed to be there, even if you're not going 100%.
Yes.
Like, still show up and just get even. And one of the girls, Laura, just left. She was 36 weeks pregnant, and she was like, I don't know when to leave. And I'm like, you're going to know when you need to go. But if you're just rocking up to just sidestep and just be in the environment, even, like and that still creates that buzz. You're hearing the music, you can feel everybody else's energy, and that in itself, gives you like that boost,
Yes. I just have to jump in again, because I think that is so important, to give ourselves and each other permission to not have to play at 100% all the time. 20% is freaking awesome. 50%, whatever it is. And again, I know, Steph, we've had conversations, but I really think we need to bring into the conversation as well, for those of us that are still that have menstrual cycles, that is a reality. You know, there's a lot of hormonal impacts in terms of how we can push. I mean, I know sometimes with some of the dances, the routines, I'm like, what the heck? I nailed that 2 weeks ago and I just feel like I almost tripped over my feet today. What's going on? There's the brain capacity. There's also the energetic component. So let's start creating spaces, which you already have, and continue that ripple effect to give ourselves permission to not have to show up to 100% each and every time. And I really love that wording around it. And again, if you're listening, which obviously you are, or watching, then it's about, yes, if you're not into dance, give it a go because it's freaking awesome. But if you don't want to, that's okay. How does this play out for you? Because any type of movement and exercise you're doing, this is relevant. And like I said before, if there's a fear of pushing yourself too much, show up, but don't go at 150%. That's okay.
There's such a crossover in what you're saying in relation to exercise and movement and business, because sometimes we just push ourselves and keep going because we believe we should. We're trying to be everything to everyone. We're stuck in the busy trap and thinking that there is no space for me to actually step away. And what's coming up for me as you say this is some days it's okay to turn up in business and just be less than 100%. But still there. And there are other days where it's the rest that's required. And isn't it funny because, you know, one of the things, my daughter's just sort of started her first experience of full-time work this year, being finished year 12 last year, and the concept of sick days. And I hear this that a lot of that age group just use up their sick leave, right? And they have their days off and all that kind of stuff. And yet there's a mentality, I think, as a business owner that, well, we don't get sick unless we've got like dying or we've got, you know, COVID and we can't actually get out of bed or whatever, that we should just always be here and we should always show up because it's our business and blah, blah, blah. So there's so many similarities and parallels between what we're talking about around movement and obviously, you know, that we could take into life, especially as business women. So I didn't have a question.
No. That just got me thinking, because obviously I got sidelined with, you know, being really sick physically, couldn't go into classes, but it also sidelined me in terms of being able to show up for Steph and I to do business things together. And I would do what I could. Unfortunately, my morning sickness manifested itself into, I got really sick if I looked at screens for too long. So I had a really narrow window, short space of time in which I could get things done. And when I first started to feel really awful, it was a real burden to try and do even that little bit that I could. And I felt so heavy about it and so awful about it. And then once I got out of that space and got out of that, you know, red zone of feeling really sick, I found it came back again to, I actually wanted to do it and I was excited to do it. And so, and, you know, now Steph and I are in this awesome space where it's like, yes, you know, come on, like we've got plans and meetings and stuff that we do each week, and it's exciting. And there's kind of this energy that propels you forward because we are in this, you know, optimal space with our systems working and our, you know, work relationship working. And so, yeah, it's interesting that sometimes we can give ourselves the space to show up however we need to show up, honestly, for our personal lives. But then when it comes to our business lives, we sometimes don't give ourselves the same space for that.
Absolutely. Such a great lesson to learn. And there, again, so many crossovers between what we've been talking about. So I would love, you want to say something?
Yes, I want to say something, because I think that's another really important point. And being business partners, it is about, and whether you have a business partner, a team or not, it's about allowing the people around you to help you, which can be really hard. And there's going to be a time, it's that season aspect that comes up, that this will pass, this too shall pass. And Ness and I, particularly in the last 18 months, have had to do that for each other as well. There were times last year where she showed up for me massively, not just because I was at dance class, by the way, but because, you know, there was life things that were going on, and then vice versa this year. But it is hard to let people help you, to let them take the load whilst we can't contribute at that time. But it always comes back, and it is a season, and this too shall pass. Yeah.
So
Can I just want to
Yes.
jump in really quickly?
Yeah.
It's something that my husband and I heard on a podcast and that we've started doing. Because he works full time as well. We've got a kid. We don't have family here, but so life is a bit hectic.
There's an accent. Yes, we did notice.
And we took this, so we were like, that's such a good idea, and we've started doing that, and it's really changed the dynamic and how we help each other out. And it's this, if he comes home from work and I'm like, okay, I've got about 60%, and he's like, I'm at 100, let's go. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or if he'll come home and he's like, I have nothing left, and I'm like, I've got 100, I can do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's just, and then you don't feel so bad then,
yes.
because the other person's like, yep, I can do it, that's fine. Like,
yeah,
and it's in swings and roundabouts, and everybody, and I feel like that's something you could really apply in a business partnership as well,
Definitely. We could start doing that, Ness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sounds like a great idea. And as does dance class, which I promise when we're up there next and there's the opportunity, I will come along. So in wrapping up, thank you so much for a fabulous conversation today, ladies, and being our first 2 people on the podcast, which is been a really great experience. But as always, we wrap up with asking our wonderful guests, what is one action that our listeners can take in the next 24 hours? And I'm going to say it's about breaking the cycle of no movement. So that, and that can be taken literally around you're not moving your body physically. It could also be no movement in business because you feel stuck. So throw it out there, and I'll might throw to one of you first and the other one next, because we'd love to hear, because that gives us 2 actions and you can choose which one you want. So who wants to kick us off? One action we can do within 24 hours to break that cycle of lack of movement.
I also think, just while you're thinking on that, there is a connection. If you're not moving in your life and you're not feeling that optimal energy, that ripples through your business. I definitely have found that correlation between the 2.
I think if you're someone that is stuck and you're not moving, and actually this is something that you said to me, Nikki, that I took on board, making it fun. So find that exercise that you liked, fun. And I remember you telling me, when it comes to sitting down and having meetings with each other, go and have it over a wine, go and have it somewhere else. And it's like, find that connection that makes it enjoyable for you, and start there.
Love that.
Love it.
I think that the other thing that I would add onto that is, don't do it alone. I think we've just identified in this conversation how awesome and refreshing and just how great it is when we're going through difficult seasons to have someone else doing that with you. And so find someone who wants to move with you. Find that person who gently can keep you accountable, someone that you trust, that that their voice sometimes needs to be the voice of reason if you're having a season of feeling low. And I think that same concept applies when it comes to finding our rest as well, and finding our space to have time to just chill out and rejuvenate. That doesn't happen optimally when we're doing it alone. Like, sync up our times of movement with the people who we love and we care about and are important to us, but sync up your rest times with those people too, because it starts to reprioritize, and things start to reset, and you get back to a place of things being settled and ready to propel you into whatever it is that you need to do next.
So good. So achievable. Find something in the next 24 hours that you find fun, and then maybe reach out to one person that you want to do that with. So thank you so much, ladies. Now, for those Brisbane-based listeners out there, tell us where we can find you so that I know which way to drive towards when I'm up there next.
You can find us at Dance Fiit in Hawthorne. So 273
Fabulous.
Hawthorne Road.
Excellent.
Beautiful. And we'll put links to the website in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, legends. I can't wait to see you on Saturday for my next dance class.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, thank you.
See you later, everyone.